Welcome back to everybody. And our apologies that the connection got lost. I'll just put on my camera again. Yes, now you can see me as well. Let's go back to today's exercise. As I mentioned, today we are going to explore how we can access the data from the ESPON Database portal, use ESPON map kits and open source software to map this data. For this exercise, we are going to analyze the FDI investments to European regions. This particular data set we picked up for especially Tuesday's training in mind that we had in Brussels, where we were engaging with data journalists this data comes from one of the first ESPON applied research projects that has been launched within this programming period. Because we are currently in the middle of our implementation, so we have managed to launch much of our planned activities. Altogether, we have 22 applied research projects foreseen for these until 2020, and this FDI project was one of the first 7 ones that we launched, and the first 7 are now also available through the ESPON database portal. The others are in the middle of the implementation or just about to finalize, so bear with us, and you will see a lot of interesting data sets coming to the database within the coming months, but also towards the end of the year. And the exercise, why we picked it, so the project was dealing with the analysis of global FDI flows into Europe. It tried to understand how regions could position themselves towards receiving FDI, as well as developing plans to attract more if it's in their interest. So it analyzed the FDI patterns and trends, what is currently happening in Europe, where we see increases in FDI, where we see decreases, what is the general overview, how the inflows are compared with capital regions to more rural areas, how it looks like in the main business and finance centers in Europe compared to more peripheral regions, what is the relevance for FDI to regional growth, competitiveness, whether it's also helping to overcome certain disparities or whether it's increasing them, and what are the current policy responses. And this topic has been quite a lot also in the current media. So you see quite a lot of discussions over especially increasing Chinese investments in different also projects that are highly relevant for territorial development, major transport projects and such. And the European Commission has been working heavily on developing certain new frameworks to implement better screening on foreign direct investments. It's also has been very relevant in the current Brexit debates, where due to the political instability, a lot of the investors have turned their back to London and started seeking investment opportunities elsewhere, like in Luxembourg, for example, where here we see also direct impacts with increasing rent prices, for example, where UK businesses are trying to move to to Luxembourg, and this has an impact on also migration of the labor force. But not only Luxembourg, but other places such as Dublin that is also seeing the impacts of Brexit. For this exercise, we would like to we developed a small scenario. So in this project, the project looks at the FDI inflows through in different ways to Europe. It addresses two specific time periods. One is from 2003 to 2009. The other one is from 2010 to 2015. It looks at the inflows into different sectors. I will quickly show you this directly on the ESPON Database portal. So for those of you that perhaps missed yesterday's exercise, this is the ESPON database portal. I hope that I can also send you the link through the chat for those of you that have not yet had the chance to explore it yesterday. So this is included in the chat. Please click on it in there to access the database portal, or you can just see the URL on the screen. Cannot zoom in apparently. Here, when you are looking at projects, as I said, today we are interested in the FDI project, which is the foreign direct investment with an acronym ESPON FDI, World in Europe. So if you click on the project and you click on search indicators, then you will see all the indicators that are related to the project. If you missed how I opened this menu, this is accessible through the filtering system here, where you can browse data either by theme, territorial nomenclature, by projects, by year, by types of indicators, and some more options which were explained in yesterday's webinar. So if you missed that, you can rewatch it after this webinar is concluded. In the data sets, we see that a lot of the data has been folded here into different categories or different classes, as we call it in the database. And you can see that all the data that has been, or all the main indicators that have been developed within this project, we are interested in the total deal value as put forth for this scenario. And for this, we would need to download, but we are not interested in producing the same map per se, but we would be interested in analyzing the same data, because as you see from the map, when looking at the total values, just zoom in. When looking at total values, we miss some of the context in our analysis. We see that the main receivers or FDI are Amsterdam and Luxembourg, but we of course know that in terms of population size and overall economic activity, these two cities are very different from each other. So it would be interesting also to look how this picture, and if this picture would drastically change if we normalize data per capita. So for this, we would then need to download the data for the FDI inflows in euros, and the total population of the regions. And the regions that were analyzed, or the data is for, is the NUTS 3 regions. Um, so we go to the ESPON database once again. We click on the, we find data for the value per period. So we click on 2010 and 2015. So I'm having some problems with the browser apparently, because it cuts off a little bit of the screen. I don't know if it's related to the GoToWebinar. I'm just trying to, maybe I'll just use a different browser. Okay, once again, yeah, here it seems to be working better. So once again we search indicators for the FDI. We need to click back on the gray area to get back to the data. We click on total deal value and we find the deal value per period. And we are interested in the period of 2010 to 2015. We click on it, then the dialog box opens for the metadata, we are interested in exploring the data and downloading the data. So for this, you see that there are two options currently available in the database portal. You can directly download shapefiles, which means that it has the geometries for the nuts regions in question and also the statistical data attached. The other option is CSV file, which is a simple table with the values. The benefit for the shapefile is that we can directly start working with it in the GIS. We don't need to worry about joining geographical information with statistical information. But the downside is that oftentimes, and especially QGIS, when we need to analyze the data further before we proceed with the mapping, then sometimes it's better to do so in a spreadsheet program, such as in Excel. For example, if you need to multiply one indicator by the other, if you need to divide one indicator with another. For example, like in this exercise we have in mind, we want to find out what is the deal, what is the deal value of FDI in relation to the population. So we want to divide the deal value with the respective population in the given NUTS 3 region. Then it's smarter for us to first prepare the data set in Excel. And then import it to the GIS and join it with the geometries. So let's explore both options, and all these data sets are also already pre-downloaded to you into the folder exercise, which you received the link from the WeTransfer. So if you extract the files, you will see ESPON Public Map Kit and an exercise folder. But you can download it again to just see how it goes. So let's first try out the shapefile. So click on it. It will download it to the respective folder. I have it in the exercise file. And I downloaded it into the source data. So a tip here that I would recommend you to do would be that if you download the data, make a copy, or at least keep the original source, which is actually easy thing to do in ESPON Database, because you usually download zip files from there. So after extracting the shapes, so depending on what type of software you're using, for zip files, you can just extract the data here. I have already done it for the exercise that we did 2 days ago. So just replace the files. And now I'm interested in browsing this data. So the next step would be to open QGIS and to open the data set from there. But before we go there, perhaps we can just check with you that whether you have all managed to install the QGIS, whether you have managed to follow my steps so far with opening the link to the ESPON Database portal to make the workshop more interactive, also online. So please raise your hands if you have any questions or comments so far. Okay, I don't think we have any concerns, so let's proceed. So in order to open the QGIS, so you just simply find where the application is located, either by searching for it, or if you have it on your desktop, even better, and you open the application. We are using for this exercise the latest stable version of QGIS, but if you have also already pre-installed a previous version, you will have a very similar experience, so don't worry about the version so much. And here I want to locate the data set that we just downloaded from the Explorer. So on the left-hand corner, you see the small folder icon. You can also click on the project and open and find the exercise folder and find the respective data set. So I had it on my desktop, exercise, data, source data, FD ideal value, no. So forget about what I just said. This is how you open the project. So for example, this is how you open the map kit. So do not go to the data set, but do go to the folder of the map kit and open the public map kit. And you should see the pre-visualized template for European map. So this is where we will be conducting our analysis and visualization in. And the benefit of such map kit is that, of course, we in ESPON, we are using these map kits to ensure that all of our maps follow the same style guidances and include the corporate elements that are important for our program. And throughout the years, we have received multiple requests to also make this type of map templates available to our stakeholders who would also be interested in developing, in producing maps, but find it hard to put the layers together, to find the relevant layers, and perhaps they are not knowledgeable in terms of coordinate systems and projections. So in order to overcome these, let's say, more technical steps, we are now providing also the information to the general public. This map template will be available to download from the ESPON Database portal once we launch it, hopefully during this summer period. But for the current exercise, you already have the access, and you can start working with it, playing with it, and conducting your analysis in order to navigate through the ESPON map kit. You need some knowledge in GIS. I'm a bit sad that we didn't manage with the polls previously, so I would know more about your profile and your skills in QGIS. So apologize if I am explaining to you the information that you already know so well, or I'm trying to just find a medium difficulty to display for this exercise. So on the right, on the left-hand side, you will see the layer tree, and this is all the geographical information that is included in the map kit. So here are all the relevant layers that are relevant for analyzing and visualizing the data. So it has all the analytical layers that we are using. It has also it has the NUTS versions currently of 2013, 2010, and 2006, and we are now working also to including the latest NUTS version of 2016. For those of you that perhaps are not working with European statistics on a daily basis, NUTS versions might be not a familiar topic for you, but it derives from the European Commission's regulation on the member states to produce and submit the relevant and ensuring the comparability of statistical information that is available through Eurostat. And as we see also with local statistics, that the administrative boundaries are constantly in change, and let's say if a city is expanding in administrative terms to also its hinterland from one year to the other through perhaps some political processes, then if we had a previous figure for city population, this is not anymore comparable to the new one, which has included perhaps a larger hinterland also to the total population. So in order to overcome this, European Commission has ensured that the statistics will be collected on a stable basis for stable regions for a certain period of time to ensure the comparability and the relevance of these statistics. And this nomenclature, these regions are revisited every 3 years, which the member states then agree with the Commission of the new delineation, and for which they start producing statistics for. And this happens 2 years after the regions have been confirmed, and then it takes additional 2 years for the member states to make sure that they deliver all the backdated statistics to ensure coherent timelines.
Martin, sorry, we have a question.
Yes.
We have a question from Melissa Skender in the questions tab.
Let's Okay, I cannot follow which folder I should open. The mapkit folder. Okay, so you should have received a zip file from the WeTransfer, which you need to extract on your computer, so you can do it on the desktop. It's called mapkit training. I hope that so if I zoom it in, then maybe it's more visible. So if you click on it, the mapkit training. So this was an email that Andres sent to the participants before we started. We can perhaps copy also the link to the chat for those that have been joining us but not been registered. I don't know, Andre, what do you think?
Yes, it's under the chat right now. Then okay.
Okay. So if you right click on the zip file, you see, and you can extract it if using your preferred software that you use for zip files, and then you should receive 2 folders, or extract 2 folders. One is ESPON Public Mapkit, which you can open, and if you double click on the ESPON Public Mapkit, I'm just trying to make it a little bit bigger. So if you click on the public mapkit, if you double click on it, it will automatically open in QGIS the map project. I hope that you managed to open it. Let us know if you have any trouble. It's a little bit more difficult to do these types of exercises through a webinar. This is a first time for me, so please be patient. So yes, I hope that you should reach to the same point where I am, because for you it's probably also very difficult if you are using it would be very good if you would have 2 devices, so one screen to watch the webinar from, and the other one where you would replicate what I'm doing. If you need to switch between tabs, then it's probably a bit tricky, but let's just take our time and try to explore as much as we can today, and if there is demand, we can do a follow-up seminar, because we are already 50 minutes in, and I think we will not manage all that I foresaw for today's exercise, because it's much more tricky to do it virtually, but we will try our best with this exercise. So, as I said, here on the left-hand side, you will see all the relevant layers, and for our considerations where we want to map the information, the layers titled with this NUTS 2006, NUTS 2010, NUTS 2013 are the most relevant ones. Mostly the NUTS 2013, which is the, I think for this delineation we have the most data in our database. And here you see also the level of detail. So NUTS 3 regions are the smallest units. So if I zoom in, you see the regional structure here. If I move to NUTS 2, NUTS 1, and NUTS 0. So NUTS 0 is the country level, and the NUTS 1, 2, and 3 are the regional levels, which oftentimes, in the case of NUTS 1 and 2 for smaller countries, they are still at the country level. So, but the idea here is to have regions that would be more or less comparable with each other in terms of population size when going to the regional level. So, also relevant for today's exercise is the top menu here, mostly in relation to the relevant menus of layer. This we will use to add additional spatial layers and data tables. And also for today's exercise, the processing tab in the toolbox. And finally, the project tab, which will later on reveal us the layout view for publishing the map. So here everything is, what you see is the data view, but if you click on the project, layouts and the map kit, then you see how our final map will be laid out, and here we can also add the legend and customize the title and all the relevant information. But let's close this for now until we have concluded our analytical work. I hope that everybody has now caught up with us. Everybody has the map kit open. And let's proceed with opening the shapefile for the exercise. So we wanted to include the shapefile that we downloaded from the ESPON database that contains the deal value for the FDI for NUTS 3 regions. So let's try to do so. For shapefiles, we will go to the top menu. So here you can see the layer. If you click on the layer, you see add layer, and you click add vector layer. In this dialog box that opened, you can click on you find the source. This is the place where we go to navigate to the location of the vector file that we want to include. You click on the three dots. You go to the folder where you have extracted today's exercise. You click on the exercise, data, source data, FDI deal value, and find the shapefile. For those of you that are not working with shapefiles on the daily basis, you see that the file that we extracted contains a lot of different file types. It's important to keep all of them in the same folder, but for opening the file, we only need to open the shapefile. The other files are going together with the shapefile, so they are related to the database that is attached to the shape. It relates to the projection that it is attached to the shape, and many other relevant information for GIS software to understand and read all the relevant spatial information inside here. So let's click on the view indicator 4013 null and open it and click on add. Then you can close the dialog box. I opened it twice, no problem. I will just remove one. I think just Give me a second. I hope this was the correct file. Okay. Yes, it's the correct file. There are two files attached. So one are the centroids, and the other ones are the regions. You would need the centroids to display stock values in regions. This is let's say a quirk of QGIS. But if you want to show ratios, then you should open the regions. So we can add both of them. So click again, add layer, navigate to the folder again, and open the view indicator 4013 polygon shape as well. Click on open and add, and then close the data. And then it should draw the regions onto the map kit. If you want to explore the data, the statistical data that was attached to the file, you can do so by clicking on this layer on the layer tree, right-clicking on it, and opening the attribute table. So once it opens, you can explore all the information that came from the ESPON database. And all the descriptions of the columns, this you will find from the metadata. So if you are not sure what the data columns mean, you can go back to the metadata which came with the zip file that was downloaded. So you go back to the exercise folder, you go to the data, source data, and you open the metadata. Then you can find out the relevant information on the columns. For this, as you remember, we downloaded the data for 2010 and 2015 for FDI values. You can also map the data directly here. So if you click on the properties, or if you right-click on the layer, click on properties, and if you go to the symbology tab and you click on graduated symbols, which would then classify the data into different classes, you can pre-visualize a map straight away. So you need to pick graduated symbols on the top. Then for the column that needs to be displayed is the years from 2003 to 2015. You pick the relevant classes. I'm just doing a crude show because for the exercise itself we are doing a couple of additional steps, but I just want to show you how you can quickly visualize your shapefiles, which you can download from the ESPON database portal. For the classification methods, you can select natural breaks, and just let's click on apply. Okay.
Martin, we have another question. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. No worries. We can just take the questions as we progress. So, can you read the question or?
Yes, the question is I'm going to read it, how to manage the outermost regions in this case, as they are located differently in the map kit shape and the one downloaded.
Yes, so there are, let's say, a couple of steps that we are currently doing. So in this map kit, indeed, the the outermost regions have been, let's say, hard, so that they don't follow the correct coordinate systems. So in principle, yes, Martinique is just drawn on top of Moscow. It is not a problem if you are using the NUTS layers that are built into the map kit. So then, if you just attach data from a CSV or an Excel file directly to the shapefiles, then you have no problems mapping these regions. Also, you see that, but if you download the data, the shapefiles currently from the database portal, you see also that the level of generalization is very much different. So we are working on mitigating the solution, and I can show you already another version of a map kit, which we will make, which will be the real version of the map kit, which we will publish. The current one is just for the training, but we are aware of some of the shortcomings, and we are working on fixing them. So with an elaborated version, you will not have this problem, and all the outermost regions will be drawn to using inset maps to the respective areas. So I just opened another project, which is development project that we currently have to overcome this solution. And there, if you open, so you see that in this case the data file does no longer have the outermost regions drawn on top of Russia and Belarus and Ukraine, but they are in their respective places. So, for example, you see that French Guiana is here, and Martinique is here is Réunion, for example, and the Canary Islands are where they are supposed to be. So we wanted to develop a simple solution, but then we realized that it was too simplistic, and now we are overcoming this solution in the next few months. So here, if you try to download the same data, you will see it will be displayed where it should be displayed, and after that, if you conclude your analysis, so here you see that I have all the outermost regions with the same FDI data displayed in where they should be located geographically. And if I go to the project and layout version, so once I start to finalize the map, then we have used inset maps, which will place them in their now on top of Russia for just saving some space. But if you want to include any let's say Natura areas or road networks or whatever data, this will no longer affect your map mapping. But just it's a good question, and we will solve this in a couple of months. But let's get back to the exercise. Okay, so let's now go back to the database and download a CSV file, because for today's exercise we are planning to download the CSV file for FDI and the CSV file for the total population in order to combine the two data sets and make our own analysis that perhaps we didn't see coming from the project, but let's according to this scenario, we are interested in this type of analysis. Let's download the two data sets. We go to the database. I had the previous dialog open still from the total FDI deal values. I click on download. I download the text delimited file to my exercise folder. I go to the exercise folder. So exercise, I downloaded it into exercise data, source data, FDI deal value, and I will extract it here. I will open the zip file, replace all the files, and then I will explore it in Excel. The best thing to do with CSV files in Excel would be just to open the Excel application and then import the data from a text file, because for some Excel versions it's not a problem to just double click on a CSV file and open the data right there and then. I think it's a little bit problem with the newer Excel files, than you see in my laptop. So currently I'm using in this laptop I have Excel 2007, which is quite ancient. But if you're using let's say Excel 2016 or the Office 365 version, you will have a little bit of a different experience, and plus also you need to pay attention because what is the decimal, how you delimit your decimals in the database. We have points, but since we are located in Europe, a lot of you have set up your Excels, so it recognizes comma as a decimal separator. So this is very important when you are importing a CSV file in order to make sure that you have all the information in the right columns, that you are not importing your decimal points in another column. So let's try to do so. So if you have your Excel open, click on the top menu here, click on the data, and you should have open data from text, or just saying from text. If you click on that, you will open the Explorer, and let's go to the exercise folder where we downloaded the data on our. So in my case, it was on the desktop. Go to the exercise data, source data, FDI deal value, and we open the CSV file that we downloaded. We click on import. Here we need to make sure that we are sure that we use the delimited. Then we click on next, and we use the delimiters as commas, and click on next. And finish. And let's check if I did everything correctly. Yes, so the dataset has been imported correctly to Excel. And here in Excel, then we can start modifying the data. I recommend once you have downloaded the data that if you need to later on import it to a GIS system, that you keep only the relevant information that you would need. Mainly it's the key. In our case, what I mean by key is that the common information that would help you establish a link between different data sets. So in this case, when we are dealing with European statistics, it's usually the NUTS code, which is marked in our database as T-unit code, which stands for territorial unit code. Why we are not saying directly NUTS code is because we are using also other territorial units such as LAU data or functional urban areas, and some also not so standardized codes. But I'm afraid that we don't have the time in this webinar to explore perhaps some of the tips and tricks that you can do in Excel in order to join the two data sets together. I can show you on my screen how to do it, but just in order to save some time, I will be brief and just walk you through, but then you can later on try this exercise on your when you have let's say a little bit more time to explore the guidance and walk through the different steps. Otherwise, we will run out of the time to actually map the information that we have downloaded. So quickly, let's get back to the database. Let's find the data set also for the population. So let's click on the data filter, clear the current search, so we can start from a clean sheet, so to say. And for population data, this time I don't know a specific project as I knew for the FDI, so it would be most logical for me to search for this data using the data search here. So I just type in population. Oops. And I just navigate through the information that it finds for me to the population, and I'm trying to find the total population by NUTS 3 regions. I see a lot of subdivision of this data set, so we have it for different age groups, we have it for sexes, we have it for different regions, so NUTS 3, NUTS 2, NUTS 1 and NUTS 0. And you also might ask the question, okay, why do you use this data from the ESPON database portal? Why not to do it from Eurostat, for example? As you learned from yesterday's webinar, the added value of, I mean, this data originates mostly from Eurostat in our case, but what we have done with these data sets, mostly our research activities in mind, that we want to make sure that all the historical data and the time series are intact. So this links to the previous discussion that I explained about the NUTS changes. So every let's say 3 to 4 years, if you go to Eurostat and you want to access let's say very familiar indicators to you, such as population or GDP, you might see that the time series backdating. So you might see the figures for the last 2 years, but then you see for certain regions a lot of data caps. And this comes from the fact that after statistical units have been rethought and redecided, then the statistical offices, the national statistical offices, need to recalculate the original statistics and submit it to Eurostat, and Eurostat needs to verify and accept them. So these processes are very lengthy, and for us, we try to speed up the process. We go directly to the national statistics offices, and we also engage in data estimation activities. So we want to make sure that for our research purposes we have, let's say, a subset of general geographical statistical data as complete as possible. So we click on the total population by NUTS 3 regions, explore data, and we download it, the text delimited CSV file. I downloaded it to the exercise folder. So the data, source data, and population. You can see also all the metadata that is linked to the indicator. The most important aspects when you are dealing with geographical data in ESPON Database is to pay attention, of course, to the corresponding NUTS version and the nomenclature level, which here is showing me NUTS 0. So let me see if I downloaded the right data or if there is any. Okay, it contains it contains all the NUTS versions, so it's okay. In order to combine the two data sets, I would like to clear up the data as much as possible to leave only the relevant information that I would need for combining the two. So as you saw, we have the FDI data for the period 2010 to 2015 cumulatively, and we have NUTS codes. So what I would do here is that I would get rid of, just to make it easier for me to navigate through the data for this specific exercise, I would just remove the columns that are irrelevant for the analysis for me as such. Of course, I would recommend you to do a backup copy if you need to retrieve some of this information later on. But it boils down to personal preferences. If this is what you would do. So here again, I only keep the territory. This is the population data set. I only keep the territorial unit code and the year 2015, which I want to use for the reference. Sorry, these webinar tools are, in a way, that's why I'm moving the tab, because I have some additional information on my screen that is relevant for the web streaming that you are not able to see, but it just hinders my view a little bit. Okay, so we have cleared our data set. So we have in the population data, we have all the population figures for all NUTS regions for 2015. Now I need to combine the two data sets, and for this I would use the VLOOKUP command. Joining data based on unit codes is much easier to do it in GIS software. You have very powerful join tools there. In Excel, it's always a nuisance. If you are fluent in Excel, then it's not a big issue. But usually, commands such as VLOOKUP or others pose certain challenges for the users. But why we do it in Excel is that again, that it's a much more powerful tool to make simple calculation in a spreadsheet than to do it in QGIS. It's much easier in Esri software, for example, but since we are dealing with QGIS, I prefer to work on my data in Excel first and then deal with it later and then import it to QGIS when I'm ready to map it. Okay, for joining the two datasets together, I would recommend to use the VLOOKUP command in Excel. You can also find the formula in the guidance document if you are trying to follow this step with me. So for this, I type in equals VLOOKUP. Start with the brackets. Click on what we want to find. So we are expecting to find the same NUTS3 code in the population dataset as we are currently in the FDI dataset. Then I use comma as a separator, but pay attention to your formula. It depends on how your language and regional settings are set up in the Excel. You might need to put in a semicolon, for example. But you can see it in the value in the formula that is opening down below. For me, it's comma. I click on that I want to find information that would link to the same NUTS code. I click on comma, then I will open the other tab which contains the population data, and then I define that I'm looking. Then I just then I click on the two columns using Shift to select all the data that is inside of this data set. I click back on the formula. I click on comma, and I identify the column of which it should pick the value from. So in this table, it identifies the common code, but I'm interested in the value that is attached to that code, which is stored currently in the second column. So I type in 2 to represent the second column. I add the second. I add another comma after the 2, and then I type in false. Here you have two options: true or false. If you type in true, then it means it looks for a similar value. But if you type in false, then it needs to find the exact value. So if you type in true, it might find you information that has for a similar code. So, but for this we are not interested. And click on enter, and you should receive this data in the table. To expand this, you can just double click. If you selected the column, you can double click in the lower right hand corner, and it will expand the formula in Excel, so you don't have to manually drag it through. So here we have now together the population data and the deal value. So this is population. Sorry, just zooming it up. You should explore further the data in order to make sure that you're also normalizing it the right way. As you maybe noticed from the FDI data metadata tab, that the data is for thousands of euros. You can consider either dividing it by 1,000 or multiplying it by 1,000 if you're interested in in normalizing it further for, let's say, millions of euros, or if you want to just look at on the basis of €1. Dividing this you all know. You just click on equals. You pick the deal value and you divide it by population, and then you have the deal value by population, and you expand the formula once again. So I will save that CSV file. So I will name the column FDI space INH for inhabitant, and then I'm sure that I will locate it later on. So I'll close the file, I save it, and this is the file that we will later on import to so exercise data analysis, and CSV FDI inhabitant, and save. If you didn't follow my steps, there is also pre-prepared data set available in your exercise folder, so you can just go from there and now include this to the map kit. To import the data to the map kit, we go to the layer on the top top menu. We click on add layer as we did for the shapefile, but for this time we are not clicking on add vector layer as we did previously, but we go to add text delimited layer. We locate the file name. So again, I will go to the exercise data. This time I put my analysis in the analysis folder, FDI inhabitant, and open. Here I get a little preview of the data. Also make sure that your geometry definition tab is selected with no geometry, because you can also have geometries attached to text files on the basis of coordinates. So if you have point data, you can specify that this data has geometries, and then it will draw you according to the coordinates in the columns that you specify. This time we don't have coordinates, and it's not relevant because we want to attach this to regions. So I'm selecting no geometry and click on add, and then I will close the dialog box. So here on the layer tree now you see that we have a new layer available, which is called FDI INH. If we want to explore what is inside of here, we can just right click on the layer and click on open attribute table. Opening the attribute table allows you to always make sure what type of data you are, that everything that was related to your input is correctly displayed. Now I remember with my calculations I also did one additional step. So you saw me doing the so I divided FDI value with the population, but I also did an additional step to divide it by year to have the average value. So you remember the data was from 2010 to 2015. So I divided the final outcome also by 6 to have the average annual FDI inflow per population. But if you explore the data in closer detail, you also see that something is not right in the data related to FDI inhabitant, FDI INH Y column, because like in Excel, you see that all the numerical values are displayed on the right-hand side of the column, but this is displayed on the left-hand side of the column, which leads us to suspect that it recognizes these numbers as text instead of numerical values. And in GIS software, it's very important to distinguish between the type of data and type of cells that you are working with. So it is not able to calculate any values based on a text string. In order for us to check this information, we again right-click on the relevant layer in the layer tree, which is the FDI INH. We go to the properties and we check in this gray menu, we check the source fields. And indeed, we notice that our field for the string text is, or field for FDI INH Y is as specified as text. So this will should raise for us certain alarms, and we need to change that to double or to integer in order for us to make to display the data later on in graduated way. So I'll just cancel and close the dialog box. To reclassify data, we need to go to the top menu, to the processing, and then we should open Toolbox. I just close it, yes. And then you see that on the right-hand side, you see a lot of different GIS tools. These are usually very powerful spatial analytical tools that you can deploy based on your needs. So we are not exploring this today, but we just need one tool in order to make sure that that we can change the type of the cells. So this tool is called Refactor. And you just type into the search Refactor, and this will give you the results. And the tool name is Refactor Tools. How do I know that tool? Some of you might ask. There's two ways. One thing is that you just have learned in your GIS courses or just through learning by doing. But in fact, actually, it's very easy to overcome such troubles as we just saw in this example by just simply, if you test something is not working, just type in your questions to Google, and it's a big community in QGIS, and usually you find your answers in different forums within a minute or so. So don't fret if you don't have the necessary skills. It's quite easy to teach yourself. So we need to change the fifth column from string to double. So just click on double, click on run in the bottom here, and this will process it. It will generate a new layer. It will keep the original file, but it will just calculate, recalculate this column in a new file, which is called now Refactor. You can also rename it if you like, but for this exercise we don't bother with it. If you go back to now to the view attribute table by right-clicking on the new layer refactor, you can see that now the numerical values are aligned to the right, and everything seems to be correct. We can double check it again by properties and going to the source fields, and now we see that the relevant information is presented as double, so we are fine. Another handy tip that I did not mention to you is related to working with NUTS codes in Excel. So this is just something that you need to keep in mind, that everything works fine, but if you import data from CSV file, or you download Excel tables from Eurostat, for example, you might face some problems where Excel is too smart for its own good. So it recognizes something as a date or as a text, and it can automatically change that, and it's only relevant for a couple of German regions, but this is something that you should pay attention to. So there is one German NUTS 2 region and 6 German NUTS 3 regions, which usually, if you open the files in Excel automatically figures that this is a date, because the regions read as follows. The region codes read as follows: DEC01, DEC02, and so on. And Excel thinks it's the December the 1st, and it automatically changes this. When you click on the column and you want to change that it's not a date, you can do so, but then you don't. The codes get messed up, so you need to, at least I have not figured out a better way than the manual way of just retyping, first changing the type to text of the column and then retyping the codes. So this is something to keep in mind. Okay, for the next step, we go to displaying the data. So we have made, and as you see from the time of the webinar, we have spent more than an hour quickly in the data preparation processes, and only now we are entering into the phase of actually displaying the data on the map. So this is very typical in these types of exercises, that you first need to prepare your data in a way that it's ready for mapping, and this entails finding the data, making sure that it's ready for your analysis, and then proceeding with mapping the data. So for the next step, we will then try to join this data table, which does not have any geographical information included. It only has the key for us with NUTS 3 codes, but it doesn't have any regions, regional polygons or points or coordinates attached to it. So we want to combine it with the existing administrative or statistical regions that we have preloaded in our GIS, and in this case it's very handy in the ESPON map kit. From the metadata, you also need to make sure, okay, which version of the NUTS corresponds to the data that you downloaded from the database, in order to make sure that you are able to display all the values on your map. So you cannot combine NUTS version 2013 to NUTS version of 2010 because some of the regions do not match. So the codes have changed because of administrative changes. So you need to pay attention to that. As I showed you before, in the metadata that comes with the database, you can easily find the version that it corresponds to. So in order to make the join, we right-click on the relevant layer. In this case, is the NUTS version 2013 level 3. We right-click on it. We click on properties, and we click on joins. And in order to perform the join, we need to click on the small plus icon in the bottom of the dialog. We click. In the first drop-down menu, we determine which is the layer that we want to join. In this case, is the refactored. Then we need to determine which is the key for joining the data. So we know that we are joining the data on the basis of NUTS codes. You remember in the data file we had NUTS code stored in the column called T-unit code. In the NUTS in the spatial layer, we didn't explore this, but you can always do it by opening the attribute table and checking which is the column name for NUTS codes, and in this case it's the ID. Perhaps we need to make it more clearer for the users that are not so proficient in the territorial delineation, but we will improve that so it's more clearer that it's the NUTS code in this case. But it's quite self-evident when you open the data attributes, but perhaps there is some room for improvement here. Again, I'll go back to the properties. I'll do the join again, or I finish the join that I started to do. So you remember, we want to add data from refactor tab. We use the NUTS 3 codes to make sure that the right statistical information is attached to the right geometries, and we click OK. And then we click on apply, and we could click OK. Now I go back to the NUTS 3 folder, and I open the attribute table once again, and you see now it has all the information attached here, so we can proceed with the mapping. I close the attribute table. I right-click again on the layer, NUTS version 2013, level 3. I click on properties. Now I need to go to the symbology tab that I already showed you in the beginning of the exercise when we were working briefly with the shapefile. I click on graduated symbols. I need to pick the column that we want to display, which is the FDI per inhabitant per year. Then I need to pick the color ramp, which colors will be used to display the map. In this case, I will pick oranges. I need to pick the classification method. Usually, you would want to use the natural breaks because it gives you the most sound outcome in terms of how the classes are formed. There are other methods as well that, but we don't have time today to go into that. But you can always find information on this online, which is the best for your analysis. So you might also, if you're let's say looking at growth in percentages, you might want to use equal intervals to determine, okay, which regions are growing 1%, which regions are growing 2%, and so on. But in this case, we are applying natural breaks. You should normally use classes between, yes, 5, no more than perhaps 7, because then it already becomes too difficult to differentiate between different shades of orange. But it depends on the data set, and based on my previous exploration in this data set, I noticed that the values are spread out quite a bit, and this already we had the indication when we saw the data that you have big outliers in Amsterdam, in Luxembourg, in Madrid, in Rome, in Milan, in Paris, and in London, which probably even after normalization will remain. Certainly in the case of Luxembourg, if you already are thinking your calculations ahead in your mind, that you see, okay, the population size is very small, but the FDI inflows are very big, and it's not so in many of the other regions. So in this case, it's better to pick a larger number of classes. I'll go as bold as 10 in this case, but it's you should use usually odd numbers, so 3, 5, 7, 9. Why I chose 10 is that I want to eliminate the values that had no data in the zeros. So I can adjust also the classes manually here when I'm double clicking on here, and I'm just eliminating the 0 values, clicking on OK. And if I untick this box, this will no longer display this class, so it will only display 9 classes. I click on Apply and click on OK. And now you see that the map has been drawn. You see also some holes in the case where no data was. So I remedied that by either making a nuts other nuts layer visible, or if I would have been smarter, I would have also duplicated the current nuts tree version and displayed no data in gray for nuts tree regions, but it's fine as it is at the moment. So from the data you see that it's perhaps not the most interesting map that we did today. It shows that most of the regions in Europe are faring largely the same when it comes to FDI per capita, which is in between, somewhere in between 600 should be 1 and 633 euros per capita, but you have very serious outliers such as in Luxembourg, or in the case of Amsterdam, or in the case of Paris, some boroughs of London, and certain other international hubs, or the case of Cyprus, which has a lot of, let's say, Russian investments, and also in relation to its energy and gas reserves. Okay, so now we have composed our map. Now it's time to attach a legend to it. We go now from the data view to the layout view. And for this, we click on Project, Layout, and we click on MapKit. And here we can change all the elements that might be relevant. We can also customize everything that we want to customize. So, for example, the obvious first thing to do would be to modify the title. This you can do by double clicking on the title, and then on the right hand side you can see dialog box, which you can change the title. So I'll just put average annual FDI inflow to regions 2010 to 2015. I will not bother in the interest of time with the other metadata, but here you should indicate the level of nuts. In this case, it was nuts 3, nuts in 2013 version, and indicate the source and relevant meta information. As it will be your map, you can also add your name. What we would expect you to keep would be just to recognize that this template comes from ESPON, and the layers were developed for us by UMS Riyadh, and they fall under the Creative Commons license, which you can freely use, but as long as you refer to it. Then the next thing, or the final thing to do, would be to add the legend. This we can do on this top menu, add item, and we click on legend, and then we can draw where the legend, we can drag where the legend should be displayed. And by default, now it takes a while, and it includes all the items that we had in the layer 3. So everything is included. So we need to adjust that and remove the items that we don't want to display in the legend. You are able to do so only when you untick the auto update tick box, because otherwise it will just this is to make sure that if you add additional layers, they will be displayed in the legend, but it can be useful, but it can be also, it's much better to do it manually and use the auto update only to populate it whenever necessary. If you lose, if you just remove something by accident. So here we use the red minus button. We click on a legend entry, we use the red minus button, and we remove the inputs that we don't want to display. But you need to keep the parent structure, otherwise it will, where your data is folded, otherwise it will remove everything. But you can always restore your legend by if you remove something that you don't want to remove by Control-C. Usually the modifying the legend, the system runs rather slowly, so just be patient with it. And then you see that, okay, we have some information, but it's still not well presented. If you double click on any legend entry, you can manually adjust them. So if you want to get rid of some decimal places, or if you want to get rid of some of the entries or modify them, you can just simply do so. I will just add legend title unit. I just add information that is relevant for the units that are displayed in the legend, which is FDI, and I like to do it in a manner where it doesn't repeat already the title. So FDI per capita euros, but do it based on your needs and your preferences. Next, I would also want to get rid of this white box that blocks everything that is hiding. So for this, you just untick the background. And then finally, I would change the size of the fonts. I will put the title, the item font to 6. and the title font to 8. And now I'm happy with the result. And the final step to make is now to export it as a PDF. If you are using, just give it a name, you save it, and then in the dialog box, I would recommend always tick the export as vectors, because then you can also modify the map in your preferred vector editing software. So usually what I do with my maps is that I polish them up in Adobe Illustrator, but and this gives also if you are publishing maps for certain publications, this gives the editors and the designers better flexibility over changing colors or changing the title or whatever needs to be changed later on by the people that don't have access to QGIS at the moment, for example. Click on Save. So this now concludes our training. We can just briefly open the map and see how what was the final outcome in PDF, and hopefully we are happy with what we see. So we are running now short on time, but I want to make sure that we have still enough time for questions. So I'm happy to stay here a bit longer. I'm sorry that we exceeded a little bit of our foreseen timeline, and I hope you could keep up with me. It's not so easy to do these trainings online, as it's difficult, especially if you don't have two screens to work with, one to follow the training and the other to do your exercise. But let's then, I'll give the floor back to Andre, and he will guide us through the discussion.
Okay, Martin, thank you so much for this very comprehensive presentation. So now regarding the questions and answers, I would invite all the attendees online at the moment to or write their questions under the questions tab, or just click on the raise hand option, and we'll give you we will unmute your microphone for your question directly. I can see that for the moment we have already one question from Maria del Sorbo. So I can read it out loud, or I can give you the floor as you wish.
Yes. Hi. Thank you so much, Martin. Hello. Thank you so much for your webinar. I find it very interesting, and I want to really dig in later on for understanding better this tool. I think it has a big potential, especially for what I have to do. Just a quick question about you quickly showed the VLOOKUP function in Excel. Could you please just let me see quickly the cells that you selected, because I was a bit lost. So at the end, just I used the file pre-prepared. So just I wanted to, because I think it's very, I think it was a very good tip to learn for matching the data. Thanks.
I can also send you more guidance, because when you're working also with CSV files, and if you save them later on, you don't save the formulas. So even if you click on the file that I completed, you don't see the formula anymore, which is a good and a bad thing. So it doesn't allow you any future changes, but then you don't get back to it as well. But I prepared so in the PPT, in the PowerPoint file,
Okay, I see it. Oh, sorry, I didn't see it. Okay, thanks. I can
and you
have a look later.
have the information on the page 14. And if you have any questions, then I can also help you out personally. Here are my contact details. So all of you, if you need, of course, I cannot open a 24/7 hotline, but I'm happy to help you if you have any additional questions, mostly related to our map kit once it gets published and finalized, and but also if you have any analytical challenges, then if I can, I try to help.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another. Thank you, Maria. We have another question. I will give the floor now to Serena Drufuca, if you wish to ask your question.
Però adesso provo a sentire Erika, perché lei dovrebbe aver fatto...
Serena, your microphone is on. Would you like to ask your question?
Serena? Hello, Serena?
I can also read it out loud. Just a moment. So, Martin, the question is, in the ESPON database is available I will read SHP odd administrative units at communal level.
Okay, what now I would need to specify what is communal level. In the map kit, there will be data administrative units representing the LAU2 will be made available. If that's what is meant by communal, the local municipalities. So if we can specify with Serena, because I can quickly show what. Okay, yes, LAU2. Not necessarily LAU1, because with LAU1 it's more complicated, because the general problem with having a pan-European database on local area units is that there is no regulation at European level for member states to submit local area data. Also the fact that different countries are working in different resolutions doesn't help. So it's a big effort to harmonize these administrative units that are in constant change. So there is no provision for keeping a certain year as a reference. The only reference years that we have for LAU2 data is the census years, for which are usually the only pan-European data sets that you will have at LAU2 level. We at ESPON have some other indicators as well. If you are interested, we can share it with you. They will be available through the database as well. So the reference year for our LAU2 units is the latest census, which is almost 10 years old. And we also worked on, because it has a very large number of units. I don't know if you can how well you can see. I'll just make the strokes visible. So what we also did with our LAU units, we have two types of layers here. One are the detailed geometries, but they have a huge number of points. which makes it computing and visualization quite difficult. You can already see if I zoom out and in, it takes a while to display all the allowed units. And for this we applied in this exercise, and this is very much simplified. It uses the Voronoi polygon methods to reduce the number of points and to give you also better experience in terms of visualizing the data. So this layer will be also available to you in short.
Okay. So Martin, I think for the moment, we don't have any other questions, but we invite any other attendee to ask them or to raise the hand, or if they wish.
Yes, there is Melissa. Okay, this question is answered. Yes, the recordings will be made available, and probably we will engage in similar exercises in the future as well, to try out different types of maps using different data and so on. If you are interested, of course.
Okay, I think so. If we don't have more questions, what I can say is yes, we are going to in the next few days we are going to make available the recording of this webinar, and of course you can always contact us, me or Martin, via email for any clarification that you might need. Yeah, I don't know if there are no more questions. Maybe we can close the session from today.
Yes, okay. Then thank you very much for all the participants. I hope you were able to follow and also try out the exercise in parallel. And we hope to see you in the future. But also we are hoping to receive your feedback in relation to yesterday's and today's exercises, how useful you found these, and also if you can point us to the right direction in your recommendations. What would you like to see more, and then we can try to figure out how we can serve you even better.
Okay, and so yeah, from our side, I would just like to say that after this session, you will receive an automatic email with the feedback form, mostly dedicated to the session itself, so they can give us your feedback. But especially for the ones that attended the session yesterday about the database portal, we are going to send you another email where with a link where you can express in further detail your expectations and about the database portal itself, so that about the functionalities that you'd like to see to help our colleagues in the development of this tool. We are going to send you a separate email with this questionnaire, but especially addressing the session from yesterday. It's all from our side. Thank you very much, and yeah, we thank you for your participation and for your interest in this session. Wish you a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey everyone.